Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of Tech and Productions. Today I am Bancroft, being joined once again by Tanner, and like always, Fluff.
What's up?
What's going on, people?
And keep in mind, there's always buttons down below. Feel free to click them. They're there for a reason. Today's matchup, we got Fluff bringing out Syn Shenron, the set 14 mill-ish deck, versus the starter deck, Vegeta, being piloted by Tanner. Guys, take it away.
So this week I'm playing Syn Shenron, or as I like to call it, how many times can I do a thing that doesn't actually do anything black deck?
Wow.
I'm working on the title. I don't think that's going to be the final one, but I'm sure there's an acronym. If someone wants to put that in the comments below, I'll pay you $5 for it. Copyright it. So Tanner, last week you played Vegeta. You changed a couple things. Tell us about it, because I love the way that this deck functioned.
Yeah, I listened to Jimmy, which is usually a bad idea, but in this case it turned out well.
Yo, I'm smart as fuck, bro. Shut your fucking mouth. All right, I'm gonna go back to the shadow.
So I actually charged the stuff Jimmy told me to put.
Tanner, did you fart? Is that what I just heard?
Pretty much.
Okay. You fatted. It sounded like Jimmy's fart mouth. Okay, go on.
No, a lot of what I added was just a little bit more to make it consistent, cut some ratios, added some things. Talking to like you guys after last week, there was a little bit too much going on and a lot of cards competing for turns. So a lot of Corn Liqueur versus the 4-drop Gohan. Negates not being in the proper ratios and not having a lot of alliance targets. So what we ended up doing was cutting the deck down a little bit, adding some assimilates to make Eradicator of Peace, which you just milled, go a little bit smoother. And added the, I believe it was the Battle Evolution King Vegeta that swaps into the new Vegeta Alliance target in this set. It really helped a lot, and even though I charged it in this case, knowing that that's a free arrival added some great consistency. Now, I will speak to your deck here. You had some great mills, but I thought this was going to play a little bit more like Shadow Dragons from set 10, because you were exceptional with that deck. This one, really, I wasn't sure what was going on.
Me either. So I had tested the deck a few times on Untap. I've been testing it with Trevor. I think I might have even tested a game against Nick and maybe a game against Jake. But you know, as is always the case, the Untap algorithm is not always accurate to what happens in real life. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So the ratios that I was using on Untap just did not work for me here. Now, I have, since this, I did retool the deck. And the deck feels a little bit closer to old Shadow Dragons, with a mill component to it. And really, you can't. I think one of the bigger mistakes is when building this, I focused too much on Shadow Dragon plus mill.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, let's call it the Shadow Dragon skill, which is basically when you play this card or discard this card, flip the top card of your deck, add 2. Like, I was focusing too much on that as the mechanic of the deck, and not as much of a bonus for doing things the deck naturally wanted to do otherwise. So I was too worried about the consistency of making sure that every time I flipped a card up, it was a Shadow Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Where I should have been focused more on how can this deck solve problems. And it really was just kind of my foresight. And like, this is kind of proof that, like, I don't always strike gold when I build a deck and come to play a deck. You know, there's absolutely, I can make some turds. Can I just say that? Like,
Oh, yeah. Well, I think we've all been there too, right? We come with a deck that we feel very good about, that we've done some testing on, and almost have this, like, false sense of security, like, you know what, this is pretty good. And then when it plays, it's just like, this isn't right. I will say one of the cards that was in that deck that when I played a match afterwards, since our locals tend to go a little long, that silver bullet, or not silver bullet, shadow bullet, or whatever it was on the unison, that card's really good. I was shocked by that.
Surprisingly enough, in my retool of the deck, I cut that down to a 2 of.
Really?
Yes, and hear me out on this. I loved hitting your secret rare there, by the way. That was fantastic. But I cut it down to a 2 of because we, as a local, are playing a lot of unison stuff right now and experimenting with Spirit Boost. But when you look at a majority of the decks that are extremely meta right now, they're not really unison focused. And
like King Vegeta and things.
Like King Vegeta, Dark Brawly, Hachiak, I don't think is very unison focused.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's just a ton in the format right now that is not unison focused. So the counter is dead if your opponent's not playing in unison. And then the activate battle, activate main aspect gives your opponent the choice of what they want to get warped. So if you're trying to deal with a problem card, but your opponent has 2 or 3 cards on the field, it doesn't deal with the problem card. It gives too much power to your opponent. So I ultimately decided that because it gave too much power to your opponent, that the card just didn't deserve a full 4 of in the deck.
I could see that. I mean, I guess since this leader is so unison dependent, it felt so powerful. But knowing what you're saying, I could absolutely see where a lot of decks in the meta don't utilize unisons.
Right.
And like you said, most of the time we say on the channel that when you force your opponent to make a choice, that's a good thing. But sometimes giving your opponent the choice isn't what you want because they can make it's such an easy choice. They can make the correct one.
Ultimate Dragon Tackle puts your opponent in complete control of that card's resolution. So even if you're activating it and trying to get your opponent to do a specific thing, like they just may not. And that's okay, but they're not good enough choices to merit spending the 1 energy on. It's not like it's putting a 20,000 body on the field plus the decision, or drawing a card plus the decision, or attacking plus the decision. Like, there's nothing else that comes along with it. You're just milling 1 card off the top of your opponent's deck. And this deck truthfully does not mill enough to try to play the Janemba strategy of mill the opponent out.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not sure if it was this game or our secondary game, but I took the Natron Challenge, as Jimmy and Bancroft have been calling it. And it was scary to do so, but there wasn't enough milling previously that I felt like I would be Oceania, sorry. But there wasn't enough milling previously where I was worried to do that amount of mill because I still had quite a bit in deck.
The difference between
if you're gonna
and the Topo John is that you're not losing resources from your hand really. So if you know you can push, go for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that Oceanus is a fantastic card in her own right. You know, it does put a blocker body on the field if your opponent doesn't kill it before you actually get to activate blocker. So in a way, she's kind of 2 negates for 2 energy. Plus, she really does cater towards the milling aspect of the deck. And if you can get your opponent to mill their super combos or their secret rare or their overwhelm win conditions or a negate that might have otherwise saved them, then it's really good in that case. But you can't guarantee that stuff's not already in the hand. So in that respect, we're not worried about trying to mill out. And now that I've changed the deck focuses a lot more on being able to survive after putting Oceanus out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was something that we found out sort of through our games, and I think you were saying is that there wasn't a lot of defense after the fact. But I'm very, very interested and excited to see the changes you made, because I felt like when this dropped, people were semi-excited about it because Shadow Dragon sort of has a cult following, I feel like. But it seems like it's a very interesting deck, and I'll just leave it at that.
I'll say that the mill is the mill, and then the when you play or discard, flip the top card, add a Shadow Dragon. Those are kind of red herrings to what the true potential of the deck is. it has the ability to play some really strong 3-drops that do a lot. And I mean a lot. And like, I'm not focusing on them here. I think I charged the enabler, or I discarded the enabler early, and I'm just not worried about it. But those are really the high points of the deck, those 3-drops, and then the 4-drop Syn. The 4-drop Syn has 4 keyword skills on it, plus it has the ability to restand after activating blocker or attacking on an activate main or activate battle timing. It allows you to activate one of your extra cards for free, and then it mills the top card of the deck for doing that. So the card does an obscene amount of stuff. But if you're focused more on the milling strategy, you may not be apt to pay for that card or focus on that card. So I think that there's a lot of stuff coming for the Shadow Dragon archetype, and I feel like that this is going to be like, it's going to be a lot like the yellow Shadow Dragon stuff. Like, it's not going to be great until we get because we're still missing Rage, Nova, and Ice for the archetype.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they released the old Shadow Dragons over the 3 or 4 sets.
Yeah.
But
and one of the things that I think that the deck overall needs is the deck needs an actual counterplay to deal with, even if it's a card that's 4 or less. It needs a counterplay that deals with that. And one of the extra cards just needs to be a negate. Even if it were just a negate 1 attack, no other effect.
Still be beneficial.
That would still be beneficial towards the overall strategy.
The what's interesting is, where I guess like looking through or watching this match, there was a lot of sequencing, and I felt bad asking you through that because most of your decks, when you play them, all your sequencing ends up being detrimental to me. And I've kind of went back in my head like, okay, with the Jiren deck, all the stuff that was going on, like there was a lot, and I needed to understand it. So I'm always thankful that you take the time to explain it. But I do recall, like, when you were going over a lot of it, it seemed like there's a lot, like this deck could be a high skill cap deck as well. It just seemed like it. Yeah, but like you said, I think we don't have everything revealed just yet.
I mean, think about when Yellow Shenron's first dropped, like the deck was good, but how much has it improved since we got the whole lineup finally?
I feel like quite a bit.
The deck was linear when it first came out. Like, it wanted to do 1, maybe 2 things. Then we got the next round of support. That support didn't do anything for the deck. And then we got the final wave of support, and then Syn Shenron blew up. Like, and I feel like this could be one of those archetypes where it's not really fully fleshed out at this point. So definitely keep an eye on it, because I feel like the archetype can be really good. I just don't think it's there with what's in set 14 right now.
I think I drew by accident because I thought it was end of turn. I'm not sure what's going on right now because I drew, then we moved some unison markers off my unison.
I mean, video isn't by any means increased in speed, so this is actual gameplay. It could have been conversations people having, talking, yada yada.
Yeah, I think someone had asked a question off camera, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that was for turn. Okay, that's what it was for. Yeah, I think that's exactly what you're right. It was asked on there, but this turn's gonna be you're attacking. I guess I charged past.
No, you're swinging with leader. You swung either to the 3-drop or to unison. He chose to activate the Shenron's effect to block.
I'm still getting used to the leaders having blocker. To me, it just seems like the stupidest skill in the entire world because it's like
it really is. Yeah.
I mean, like, I know in Videl it kind of makes sense because, well, I mean, like in Jimmy's earlier builds with like the red-green, you wanted to keep it away from the unison or possible things on field, but I don't know. Maybe it is good because a lot of these set leaders deal on spirit boost, but I don't know.
Toa is such an essential piece to the strategy that activating blocker gives her an extra marker every turn. So it turns her from a +1 to a +2, which is really important because she actually is, and I would say less so from the like spirit boost aspect, but the ability to refuel your deck with her +1 is more valuable in my eyes than anything else. Like if you don't have the Toa, you're just really not doing anything. And I just want to point out that on your end, so we've been focusing a lot on Shadow Dragons, but can we just say like how absolutely gross that Piccolo is with this leader?
Oh, it's nuts. It's absurd.
Like what in the actual fuck were the people at Bandai thinking? Like,
I think they weren't thinking anything because they managed to put limit 1 on Kaba, which we can talk about that later. But this Unison was absurd on its own. I mean, we've talked about it, and I don't want to spoil other matches that are going to be on later, but its counter ability is absurd. You get to blow things up. The fact that you can wipe a board with it, which is what some of those tweaks were for, that Alliance Vegeta that evolves, it was there to be a field wipe card if I needed to activate it. Its +1 is just value. And the double strike with the leader swing is insane as well. And that's a Unison you want to get off field. And I will say, in a few matches, people were very smart with how they attacked it and tried to bait out the Unison or the leader negate for it by swinging with a single striker and hoping that I'd proc it. And I think in one of our matches, I actually stopped and asked, do I have to do that on auto, or is it a auto I choose to resolve?
Yeah. It was during one of the game that we played after this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, I do want to talk on this. That Gogeta Acrobatic Warrior was the unsung hero in this entire deck. This is the play. With Eradicator of Peace, it is essentially a quad strike attack. If the opponent is not able to take care of Eradicator, you're going to burn one for Eradicator, then resolve the Gogeta and burn another, and then the double strike that he has, you're basically going for game. Not to mention the fact that with Alliance, your combo or your power level goes so far up. And then, of course, you're showing me that there wasn't much that you could do. But that Acrobatic Warrior with Eradicator of Peace is insane. I think the theme of this deck is Piccolo's broken, and Bandai's really been, I guess, trying to give him love by putting him on cards that are just absurd.
Well, I mean, they fundamentally did Namekians wrong. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so,
absolutely.
at least they got a little bit of love out of Eradicator of Peace and Descendant, the Unison. But it's so much value. And when we're at a point in the game now, when you think about counters, there aren't a ton of counters in the game right now, unless you're playing against a deck that is using a Unison.
Mm-hmm.
And then, depending on what Unison they're playing, they may not have a great resolution option for dealing with Acrobatic Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not playing in set 6, set 7 meta anymore, where everyone's running Denial of Hope, everyone's running Preemptive Strike, everyone's running Frost Deadly Poison.
Mm-hmm.
Some decks just don't have a response to those cards.
And I feel like that Gogeta, because it's been so strong for so long, I'm always very, very careful to play the Gogeta and then ask for the response, hoping that they will respond to the Gogeta, because I want them to burn their counterplay on that. I mean, everybody thinks that card is the sort of linchpin, and it does do a lot. But when they burn the counter on him, and you can play the Acrobatic Warrior, assuming it's not a Trunks counterplay where it gets sent back to hand, the Acrobatic Warrior usually flies under the radar and gets played, and I think that does most of the work in this particular deck.
Every time that I've run that 5-drop Gogeta, I've almost exclusively run that Gogeta to play and put Acrobatic Warrior in my deck, because it truly is the premier card of those two cards.
And with that being said, thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all enjoy, and keep in mind, while Fluff does the outro, there's buttons down below and on the screen.
Click on one of these. Hopefully you haven't seen them. Hopefully it's something that you like. Keep an eye out for mine and Tanner's deck profiles. Both are coming. Both are insightful and should prove to be pretty helpful. Let us know what you thought. I'm sorry I disappointed all the people that wanted Shadow Dragons to do really well. I took myself out of the tournament because I was that disappointed in it. But like my motto always goes, read your cards, know your plays, let us make the mistakes so that you don't have to. Playing pure Shadow Dragons is a mistake. I'll just tell you that now. Absolutely, I'll own it. And as always, fluff out.